anything. I'd go to bed listening to that song. It was just, a song of praise and adoration. And that song was very comforting for me.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Marlon Robinson with Family on Point. This is part 2 of our interview with Nichole and Ricardo. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video.
To him, God, in God's time, if it hasn't happened yet, it's because God doesn't desire for us to have a child yet. And I had that confidence in that things will be okay, but in time. But sometimes, and then guess imagine Ricardo say, we don't have a lot of time. And I'm like, well, God says in his time,
So did that affect the romance? Did you guys experience more conflicts than normal, more arguments?
No. So for me, we also are business partners because we have a company that we run together. So we're a couple, personal life, and then we have business life. And I felt like during those times, we didn't spend a lot of time nurturing the emotional part of our relationship, but working together as a couple. So we became a really strong couple as business partners. But that personal part was not being worked on. It's not that we were having a bad relationship. It's not like we were arguing and not talking to each other. It's just that we weren't nurturing. We have the marriage is holistic, and we weren't focusing on all the areas. So that part of the marriage we weren't nurturing, but we were best friends and we were getting along, but that part wasn't being nurtured. So Ricardo had needs that weren't being met. They weren't being nurtured. And I have blocked things out and just moving on to the next, so you're not dealing with certain issues. And also, there's another thing it just slipped me. So Ricardo, you can jump in if you want to.
As it relates to our relationship and intimacy, as I said, after 2 miscarriages, 1 stillbirth, as I said numerous times before, being scarred, I remember saying to Nichole, I don't want to try again. To the point where there are times I considered adoption. Like we have discussed it, like not in great detail, but to the point where we have had the discussion of possibly adopting a child. Now, as it relates to the intimacy, as I said, because we don't necessarily want to try having a child again, there are times that, even becoming intimate, sometimes it makes you think, you're overthinking certain things, per se. So
yeah, and I talked about being business partners to me one day. Well, Nichole, what are we doing with all what we're working for if we don't have someone to pass it on to?
Wow.
To give it to. And everything that we're doing it has no value.
Yeah.
So those were some of the things that, Ricardo would communicate to me.
Was that pressuring for you, or?
I would say I did apply a lot of pressure to her, and to some extent, for example, my mom, and I don't want to go too much into that aspect of it, but from my mother's perspective, there are times where she felt as though why we don't have a child, or why my wife can't have a child yet, and so forth. So there's those subtle pressures that she would put on to me, and then I have this great desire to have a child that I put on to Nichole, and maybe at times I may have said something mean, but I am married to this woman that has this incredible strength and incredible mental fortitude that I give God thanks for her, because what she has gone through and just being able to just handle to this point, she's remarkable.
And I know people are, just before you jump in, I know people are listening to this and they might be going through, what you've been through. And so I want to share with our audience, just before we talk about, the grace, what kept you guys going and say, okay, let's try another time.
Yeah.
God
did it.
Say more. Because our listeners might not be people of faith or whatever, so they hear God, say a little more so that we can put a little more substance on it.
Listen, God will keep you even when you don't know you're being kept.
Yeah.
You ever feel like you're just moving in life And you wonder how you survive from day to day, even when you're not trying to solve anything or deal with anything, he's there working in the background. Because even getting pregnant, I mean, it was just such a shock that I was pregnant. We were really shocked. We were like, we weren't really dealing with that, to the point where Ricardo didn't believe. He had a hard time, like, you're pregnant, like, it's like you're trying to process all those emotions that you've gone through, and know that God has given you what you asked for. You don't believe it's true.
One thing I'll say though, Dr. Robinson, is that pregnancy goes for 9 months. There's a lot of challenges and psychological mind games that happens throughout those 9 months.
Correct.
And for me, when I hear that Nichole is pregnant, and now for us to go through that 9 months, that's when I'm trying to find the right word. The errors, the imperfections of Ricardo started to come forward. So, for example, the baggage that I would have had, the emotional scars, I started to bring them forth in different ways. So I put this pressure on Nichole, because now that we have realized, so on the third time that we have now, fourth time that we have now realized that she's pregnant, and I guess maybe, I'm not sure if we can go to that point yet, Dr. Robinson. I'm not sure if you want us to touch on to that point yet.
Yeah, you can go now. We are there. So you find yourself projecting what happened in the previous 3 scenarios, right?
So this is where God and I've
was that your fear or your anxiety or
all of the above. So this is where God now has, as I said, looked at me and say, my son, I have you, right? And he said, okay, I want to allow you to find, because we prayed. Well, the first thing that when we found out that Nichole was pregnant, we prayed and said, Lord, I want your will to be done this time. And he guided us to a gynecologist or a high-risk pregnancy person. And I said the Holy Spirit guided us at this point, because we found this person and we told her our history, and she started to direct us in certain directions, medications that Nichole would need to take, certain practices or certain dietary needs that she would have. Now, this is where my imperfection steps in. Because of my anxiety, because of the baggage, because of the pain, the scars I've experienced, I now start to put this pressure on her. If Nichole wants a chocolate bar, I am down at her and like, no, you can't. And sometimes this creates arguments, and sometimes it creates challenges in our relationship, because during this 9 months now, we have to survive this. I say survive because, Nichole has to deal with my anxiety and my imperfections that I'm placing on her, and it becomes a lot of pressure on her. Plus, she's going through everything that she's going through with pregnancy. So there are times it was extremely difficult, and with everything that she had to go through. And as I think back on the situation, it's very overwhelming, because I think about injections that she had to do, things that she had to take, medications, and these were like every night and throughout the time. Throughout the entire period, and some of them I had to administer, and it became extremely difficult because we were trying so hard. I felt like I was doing everything that I could to ensure that there was a success in this situation. So anything that Nichole seemed as if she just wants a break, and maybe she wants a chocolate bar, or maybe she just don't want to do this time, like it would get frustrating for me, and then I'd put that on her and frustrate her. So that was extremely difficult for us.
So Nichole, I know we're going to talk about grace. What was the support system like in all of this? Where did you find support? Who supported you guys? What was the oasis that you could have turned to, that you could have, at least maybe not refresh in the full sense, but at least, make sure you don't lose it?
Okay, so first support, Ricardo spoke about us, the Holy Spirit leading us to get a doctor that was a Christian. We didn't know she was a Christian, but we knew. The Holy Spirit just said, did you check that doctor right there? We had an office space in Mandeville, and across from it was a doctor's office, and it was a Harris doctor's office. And we said, let's check there, because this time now we're looking specifically for someone who specializes in Harris. And I went there, and she was very nice.
Say that
And
again, because I want our audience to know this. In a video that I had put up some time ago, I emphasized that you don't want, somebody who is trying something. Okay, you want somebody who has a proven record, with these issues, because I know in the context in Jamaica, there are a lot of people, they don't specialize, but they try things. Okay, and so you want to make sure you have somebody who is specialized, who has a track record. So I want you to talk to the audience. You went through it, so tell them how important this is.
But this time around, we were much more deliberate in our approach to finding a doctor, someone who had experience. That was very important for us. We had no referrals. No one was referring us. It was weird. And it was during COVID too, so it was a weird time. And I remember Ricardo said, Nichole, I remember seeing a high-risk doctor's office across from where we had our office. So let's go check them out.
Pause. Quick thing. One of the reasons why, you probably wonder, why didn't we go back to the previous doctor that we had, who had delivered the stillbirth, because she was a high-risk pregnancy doctor as well. The reason being is that we felt as though we were having faith, but she wasn't. It's almost like, and I can't say she didn't believe in God, but there are times it was questionable whether or not she believed in God. And one of the things we also prayed for is we wanted to have somebody who, I'm not sure if we prayed that the person be a Christian or believe in God, but something along that line,
Yes.
So you want it to be in harmony as it relates to, okay, your doctor, will support what you support, right?
That's exactly what God did. God provided a doctor who, I don't know if she assessed us, because Ricardo always goes to the doctor with me. It was
wonderful.
Very
I
rare.
encourage men to do that. That's wonderful. Men, do that.
It's strange because in the office it's mostly women only, mostly, because you do have some women with their partner coming in. But there are times when I sat there and I told her my story. I said, this is my history. This is where I'm coming from. And at this point, I want to start off on the right foot, out the gate. And she's like, okay, no problem. And she put me on the medication that I needed to go on my routine and to be checking my sugar levels. She had me on a routine, and we had a plan.
That was good.
And so, but apart from the fact that she had a plan and we liked that the structure, she was a very spiritual person, and she would say, there's hope. Don't put your faith in God. She said the things that we needed to hear in the office, because not only did she have the scientific background, she also had the faith that God would bring us through. And I remember Jeremiah 29 verse 11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. So claiming that we need to claim that promise, but it doesn't stop us from going through challenges, I can tell you. And that my experience, I had to cut my diet. My diet had to change. So I ended up losing weight during my pregnancy. I also had to take, there was a special injection. Well, before I started taking the injections daily, I had to do a procedure to stitch up my cervix, because she said this was very small, and sometimes the weight of the pregnancy can cause it to burst or something like that.
Cause a miscarriage.
Right. So she, when I reached the right time, she brought me I went to the hospital, and she stitched me up, and trust me, she stitched me up real good. And then I had to,
Good. So ladies, things can be done. I've heard of other people who have, had miscarriages and did the same procedure, and they were successful. So this is something you want to make sure you talk to your doctor about, as an option.
Yes.
So
go
ahead.
I just want to interject here, though. One of the things is, as you mentioned, experience, Dr. Robinson, is that with this doctor, it's almost like she knew all of the areas that you could fail. And then she says, we're going to ensure you can't fail at this level. You can't fail at this one. Can't fail at this one. So she tried to check them off and apply science where these are the modern science technologies that we use to say, okay, if it can happen here, let's put this in place to ensure that the chances of it is slim.
Yeah.
You know?
So I had to do that.
And so you see how important it is to have somebody with experience, somebody who's an expert, because this person is doing planning by projection, meaning, okay, we know that this is a likely, era, so let's plug this loophole right here, and so that the probability can rise higher.
Yeah, and in terms of her being a woman of faith, she had experiences that she shared with me of persons who had challenges and then they had their babies. So she also had the faith element to believe that all things are possible. Yeah. And I had an experience where I was bleeding. I saw blood again.
Wow.
And in this pregnancy, you can just imagine the stress. And when I went to her, she said, and I was so scared when I laid on that bed waiting to see if the heart was beating, but I remember I wasn't afraid. I knew the baby was still alive. Ricardo was like stressed out. My mother. I think my mother really hard. My mother took it. She was stressed the whole time.
My goodness.
There, everything was fine, and she said this normally happens. Sometimes you might have a tearing, and she gave me medication for it, and she told me what we need to do. So as I said, it was just everything by the book.
And the thing is, as Nichole mentioned, there was so much anxiety. You remember I mentioned to you about 9 months. We were going to the doctor every 2 weeks, right? No, every week at one point, yes.
Yes, I went to the point where the doctor felt so bad she would reduce my fee. Yeah, because I would go every week.
So you can just imagine how expensive.
Wow.
She feels sorry for us because we're paying.
That's so a wonderful doctor.
But at the same time, for me, is every time I would visit, there are times in the back of my head, and this could be the devil, was just saying, what is going to go wrong? It's like you just wonder what's going to go wrong.
Wow.
Because you've gone through so much hurt. So by the time you get to this point, it's almost like you forget that you serve a God who's always good, and it's like, I'm just thinking, is there something going to be wrong? So there are times, for example, Nichole mentioned this one situation where, she could feel the child inside of her. She could feel the child, but because of my skepticism, you wonder what, if you're going to go there and you're going to hear there's no heartbeat.
Yeah, and Ricardo also had this fear that the baby would be sick, especially because I had to take all the medication. I had to be doing all the injection. He just felt like, this is not one healthy pregnancy. This not look too bright. So he was very doubtful that the baby would even be a healthy baby, he felt the baby would have some, abnormalities. He had some concerns along the way. So he struggled a lot with that.
Just to add some context.
Just before Ricardo come back in, I want to ask you a question. And I want you to speak to the men. How important is mindset? To be there during this time, knowing, your wife going through all these biological and all these mental and emotional changes. How important is the mindset of the male during this time?
So just before I touch on that,
even though probably, your mindset might have been different, but I wanted to shape it in a way, so that the males who are watching would understand, the mindset that they need to have.
So just before I touch on that, I'll just add, so right now, my career is in computer science. That's the area of expertise that I have. However, when I started off high school, throughout high school and into university for the first 2 years, my background was biological sciences. That's what I studied. I was on the path towards becoming a doctor. So in the context of biological clocks and just certain things as it relates to a pregnancy, I was somewhat of way off, right? And therefore that played on my mind. The science of that played on my mind as well throughout my own experiences with my wife. And therefore, typically it is known that the average time for a woman clock is about 35, 40. So when you're starting to edge that area, start to work. Now, as it relates to the mindset of a man, and during these times, it's multifaceted. So one aspect I would ensure that I want to share, and for men to kind of try to apply it to their lives, is that during this time, this is where a woman needs your support in every possible way. And I'm not just talking about financial, but even the emotional side. She's going through, her emotions are all over the place. There's this thing called brain fog, where she doesn't remember, or she doesn't rationalize things as well as what she would have done outside of being pregnant. It is a very real thing. So therefore, being able to just support her, help her to, get around, help her to achieve some of the things, whether she's still working or whether or not she's home, but just trying to do some of her basic tasks. It is very prudent for a man to be there at that time. Now, as it relates to going to the doctor's office, this helps men to better understand what the woman is going through. It also helps you to better see the growth of the child that is coming into the world, right? So being there and hearing the heartbeat. By the way, Dr. Robinson, the first time when Nichole was pregnant, the first ever time when I heard the heartbeat on that sonogram, it's almost like my body shivered.
Wow.
It was something special, just hearing that other human heartbeat that was not my wife, it was just another, it was so magical. It was so different than outside. And I believe that for a man to experience that ahead of the birth of the child is something that a man should ensure that he participates in. I can't say to a man that you need to be there during the birth canal process. I can't say that, but what I'll say is that throughout the 9 months, if you can be there with your wife to support her, to hold her hand when the scan is being done, it is not about being romantic, but it's just being there to support and ensure that your wife emotional and chemical balances, because she needs to be happy during this process, because the happiness and the chemicals that will flow through her body, our bloodstream during that time, can also help the baby, to develop a happy child, so.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nichole.
Yeah, that is so true. And but what I find is that, men are used to being taken care of by their wife or partner. And so in my situation, it was almost like Ricardo was taking care of me. And I think that was difficult for him, because he would have to administer the injections that I had to take every day. I had to take one injection, or was it 2? I think I had to take some daily injections in my leg or in my arm, and they were very painful. Yeah. And Ricardo did not like to see me in pain.
It's difficult.
Wow.
And throughout my pregnancy, I was in a lot of pain, different type of pain. And he didn't like it. Plus, no, I can't take care of him. I can't cook as much as I'd want to. I can't, do the daily things now, because especially I'm having high rates. So my pregnancy is a little bit even more complicated.
Sure.
But times that my mother would come by and she'd cook for us, and try to help to make the situation better. So, but it was really, plus we had a business. Remember, we're both business partners. So now I am very strong in the business on my end. So now he has to be doing his part plus my part, plus he has to be taking care of me. So I feel like in some case, in a way, he was very overwhelmed with everything that was going through. Plus the emotions, feeling that every time we go there, if I'm in pain, he just feels like the baby's either one, not going to survive, or two, the baby is not going to be well. So, I feel like, and I didn't realize he was going through all of this because I was consumed with my own experience. So I didn't really have time to really talk through any of his feelings, and Ricardo wouldn't open up and talk about what he was going through. So in a way, I feel like Ricardo was looking for a way to escape the experience, find something that was better, more pleasant.
Sure. So am I hearing you saying that you're challenging the men to own their emotions and to be able to express their emotions?
talk. You have to talk
No,
about what.
say it. Tell the men.
But it's not just to talk about it. I feel if you can find professional help, if you can find other men that have had the experience, because I believe that if you can get counsel of wise men, not foolish men, no, not men who that will tell you all kind of nonsense, but men who have had experience and who have supported their wives, through various complicated situations like this, that can help. If you can get a professional, a therapist or a counselor who has been trained in this area that can support you to get through your thoughts, get through the emotions that you're going through, it will significantly help. In just moving forward and just being there to support your wives or your partner.
So men, we're saying, do not suffer in silence, okay? Speak up, express yourself, get the needed help. Because I know a lot of times we try to say, okay, we're macho, we can do it. And that's the reason why a lot of men, they die from heart attack more than women, because they stuff a lot of things. So men, it's very important to get the help, to show that soft side, to be emotional. It doesn't make you a lesser man. In fact, you're a real man because you're in touch with your entire being. All right, Nichole, go ahead.
Yes, and I was told that maybe Ricardo is going through. There's this thing women go through after pregnancy, like a depressive state. I don't remember the
Postpartum depression.
Yes, and I'm learning that men go through that as well, even during the pregnancy. And I feel like Ricardo had some symptoms of that. And it affected him, our marriage, to the point where we had to do counseling during our marriage. I'm pregnant and I'm going through all these things, and even the devil attacked our marriage at a point where you're strong. Let's say you're strong as your weakest link or something like that. So I feel like the devil really, there are a lot of wins for us that year. One, me getting pregnant was a massive win, and I felt like the devil really came on the attack during my pregnancy, and to the point where it affected our relationship. Ricard did allude to the fact that we almost didn't make it through the pregnancy. Our marriage almost didn't make it.
Wow.
And which is weird, because you have asked for this one thing you asked. God is finally giving it to you, and no, you're like, no, it feels like everything is falling apart. So that was a very difficult time. We had to seek professional counseling. We also had to seek God. Like, I remember reaching out to my friends, and they prayed for me. I remember speaking to some prayer warriors. I remember journaling and praying daily. It was a time when I really drew close to God, because I was not only fighting for the life of my child. No, the doctor was doing everything to help me make it through my pregnancy, but the devil now was attacking my mind.
Wow.
My emotions. So my entire body was under attack, and so I had to fortify myself in the word of God and live on his promises to make it through.
So you said live on his promises. What was one promise that kept you going, that you kept going back to during this time for reassurance?
Yeah, I remember sharing with you one, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. This is Jeremiah 29, verse 11. It says, plans to prosper you, plans not to harm you, and plans to give you hope and a future. And within this promise, it speaks about keeping me safe during my pregnancy. I won't die. My child will be safe. It speaks about hope. So even though we were having challenges in our marriage, where there is hope and a future, there was a good future on the other side. So and it was hard, because there are days when I was very like, I wanted to give up. I just wanted to give up, but I had to keep going for my child. I had to keep going, and just trusting God that he'll take me through and take us through. And thankfully, we were able to make it through to our 10th anniversary, because by the time I was pregnant, we had now approached 10 years of marriage. Can you believe that? And that's
Wow.
when
Congratulations.
we almost didn't make it, Marlon. We almost didn't make it, but God said, no, 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 no. That's not going to be your story. That's not going to be your end. And we were able to come together in the final stretches of my pregnancy to, just rededicate our lives to God and press forward together. And our daughter was born in February, Valentine's Day, February 14.
Wow. So what do you make of that? Valentine's Day, February 14th. What do you make of that? Your marriage didn't make it. You had several challenges where, 2 miscarriages, 1 stillbirth. And now the day that is celebrated as a day of love, your daughter is born. And if I'm remembering correctly, her name is Grace. So I want to hear the story behind that as well.
Yes, Marlon. What it says is that the darkness won't last.
Wow.
The dark last. It feels like it will last forever, but it doesn't last forever. I am a witness that the darkness will not last. It will come to an end and you will come out on the other side. So I know there are probably further challenges for us to experience in life. I know that, we're not spared from heartbreak and heartache. And so you have to navigate different levels of challenges as you go through your relationship or your situation, but you can come out on the other side. I think you have to focus more on who you are during the dark times, because your character and your faith will be tested, but you have to just hold, yes, and be refined, but it won't last.
So, my birthday is February 16th. So I wanted our daughter being born on the 16th. But God would have it that, that was the only day it was possible.
Yeah, because I had to do a C-section. Let me just clarify. And it's not that we told the doctor in advance that was a day. It was just how she worked it out in her schedule, and based on when she said she didn't want me to go longer. It's just her working out the logistics, and it happened to be that day. And it could have been a different day, because I could have showed up at the hospital and they tell me, oh, we have emergency cases. We have to push you back, So it's not like, everything was confirmed, but it worked out that was the day.
Good.
And then, so, that being said, I believe that was a symbol by God saying, this love will last. And this is our love baby, that's made out of love and made, because this is a child that we wanted. This is a child that we believe that God has blessed us with. Now, God's grace is sufficient. And I would say that how grace came about, because one of our favorite hymns is "Great is Thy Faithfulness." In that hymn, it says summer and winter. It mentioned summer and winter.
Springtime and harvest.
Springtime and harvest. We actually wanted our children to be called summer and winter. So wanted our daughter to be called Summer. Now, that's the initial conversation that we're having. However, the Holy Spirit had it a different way. And through all the situations we were going through, with everything that was happening during this time, Nichole was laying there one night, and she said it just came to her to say the baby's name should be Grace.
Wow.
At first I was like, but I was like, if the Holy Spirit came to you that way and said the child's name should be called Grace, we'll call the child Grace.
Yeah, it was a very strong, I don't have any experience of God speaking to me directly, like hearing his voice so clear. But that night as I laid in the bed, I just heard the word grace.
Wow.
And I remember saying, okay, that's gonna be her name. And I spoke to Ricardo about it, and he said, okay, no problem. And so her name is Grace Summerlee Thompson. And Summerlee, because one of my friends said, you should spice it up a bit to give a little variety, add the Lee to it, or Anne. So we said Summerlee Thompson, and she is a healthy baby girl. She's 11 months this week, and
Wow.
she is one more month before her birthday, and she's just, she's so smart. Every fear that the devil put on us, God said no. And it shows me, and talk about God's grace, that you can look at her and see where we've come from and what he's brought us through. It's only his grace. It's only
his
grace.
Promises are always true. That's the thing, it's just this morning I was listening to a sermon that was being talked about Abraham and God's promise to Abraham to give him a son, and to have the entire nation through his bloodline or through his lineage. And there were times that Abraham was tested. You can remember one clear test where God asked him to sacrifice his son. And I'm just saying that, how is it that God would ask this man to sacrifice his son if his lineage was supposed to go through this child that he had? And it just reminds me of, there are times when I felt that we wouldn't have a child, but there are also times that I was like, I don't see why God would not give us a child. God would not give us legacy. As Nichole mentioned before, there are times where we said, if we're just on this earth for a small time and then we're supposed to die, why is it that we're working to accumulate things? And, there's going to be a point that you're no longer on this earth, So I wanted to at least leave something for a legacy, that I could leave for my child. And I believe God said, this will be possible, but you just need to trust me. And that's it.
Sure. I have last two questions. I know that, the Lord has blessed you, Nichole, with singing. And so, and I know oftentimes you get inspiration. Did the Lord inspire you with any song that kind of capture your experience during this time that you want to just share a line or a verse, with us? I'm not sure. I'm just asking that cold turkey. You just want anything that the Lord inspired you as you were going through this experience that, speaks to what that you want to share.
Well, I didn't get any inspiration to pen a song, during this time, but there's a song that I sang a lot. It's a simple song that said, I love you, Jesus, more than anything. And it was just, despite what I was going through, I knew I loved him. I knew he was real to me. I knew that everything would be okay. Even though I couldn't understand the challenges, and it goes like this. I love you, Jesus. I worship and adore you. Just want to tell you, Lord, I love you more than anything. I'd go to bed listening to that song. It was just, a song of praise and adoration. And that song was very comforting for me during this time. It's very simple, but I just knew that regardless of the challenges and the problems we were having, and the problems with pregnancy, the problems in our relationship, I just knew I loved God and that everything was under control. And I think I just held on to his promises, and I just knew he had things under control.
There's one other song that I don't think Nichole remembers, but there's a song that she used to sing to baby Grace in her belly while Grace was still inside of her. Do you remember what that song is?
I'm not sure which one.
Special.
Yes, I used to sing to her. God made you special. God made you so special, for there's no other who's just like you. Special you are. So I used to sing that a lot. And I sing it now too. I sing it to her and now she just look at me like,
Sure,
and
sure.
I know she loves music. I know
Yeah.
she loves music. I hear it when the music comes on, she listens or she
Her
pauses, her focus
yeah.
shifts. So I know that was very impactful for her. She loves music, as far as I can see so far. So yeah, those
That's
songs kept,
wonderful.
and many other songs I can't. I just had a whole gospel playlist. I just play. Listen. So one thing I want to share. I told you I journaled. I found this pregnancy journal on Amazon, and I bought it, and I read the devotionals, and I wrote. For the first time in my life, I wrote down what I was experiencing in my pregnancy. And I also wrote prayers to my daughter. I wrote them down. And I wrote my prayers down. So I journaled a lot because as I told you, the devil was attacking my mind and my emotions. I couldn't control, I could do what I needed to do to manage the physical things, what the doctor told me to do. But mentally, I had to journal and write my prayers because there are times when I couldn't pray verbally, I couldn't express myself, I expressed my feelings, but I took my time to just sit down and write down my prayers. And when I couldn't find prayers now, I would go online and look for some prayers. If you believe that there are prayers online that people have published on blogs and different articles. And I found some and I rewrote them and I read them. So that's something I did to fortify my mind because this was what the devil was attacking my mind, wanting me to believe that God's promises was not true, was not real. And in relation to the playlist, the music, so they say it's one good thing to do to get you into a powerful mood is to play some Christian music, some gospel music, just to get you into that in the right atmosphere. Because sometimes we talk about praying, but there are times when it's hard. It's hard. You're angry, you're emotional, but sometimes you just need to get into the right prayer mind. So I would encourage persons to put a playlist together, find the promises in the Bible, write them down, write the promises down. I remember I was speaking to a prayer lady, and she gave me a list of promises to read to myself. And I wrote them down and I read them and I journaled. I wrote down my feelings. I wrote down promises and I read those and I declared the blood of Jesus over my life and my family. And, so there is a lot that was done. But we are in a spiritual warfare, which means that sometimes the battle is not physical and it's all based on our perception, our feelings, our emotions. And that's what the devil uses to deceive us. So the devil may tell us that, you're not happy. You deserve better. This is not it for you. He may tell you, you will not come through, things won't work out. This is negative thoughts is what you have to work against to survive. And guess what? There are some persons today who are still struggling to have a child. There are some persons that are struggling in their marriage and their relationship. They're still struggling. There are some persons that are at peace based on wherever the circumstances. It's all about fortifying your mind and placing your focus on God to survive that type of challenge and trauma. Marlon, I just wanted to, you asked me about my support system earlier and me got derailed. So I talked about the doctor, excellent support system. My mother was very present. I think she felt like she was pregnant because
Wow.
she even said to me, "You're really gonna try and have another child after this?" And that was very telling to me that she was traumatized. It really affected her. Also, my friends, I have some very good friends that I could call upon, and they just encourage me. Spiritual friends, friends who knew God and knew what to say. The Holy Spirit used them to comfort me in the deepest and darkest times. And that was amazing. So You know, you have to find persons who are anchored in God, because if your support system is not spiritual, if they don't have faith, then you're going to have a hard time just finding anchor, these persons to lift you up or to put you in the right direction where to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is so true. You preempt my final question, but I'm still going to ask it anyway. What encouragement do you have for those who are going through this, season of pain and loss? They might be struggling with infertility issues, miscarriages, stillbirths, and they're wondering, what next? What would you say to them as a couple?
In retrospect, like I'm looking at all of what we've gone through and just sharing it and just having a recap through us, I realized that the devil doesn't like families. It is the prayer of my wife and our support system, and even some of my prayers, that has helped us to overcome and get through this situation. Now, the miscarriages, some of the issues that are being faced, or the issues that are being faced by women, and even to some extent men who are going through just not being able to have a child, or have a family as how they want to. It is not of God. It is of the devil. That's not how God had created human beings to actually live and survive. He created us to procreate and have kids. Due to sin, that's why we're in this situation that we're in. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it is possible, not just through prayer, and fasting and supplication to God, not just reaching out to God, but through modern science. God has blessed doctors nowadays to have the technologies and the knowledge to be able to help us to get through some of these situations.
So having the right medical support.
Right, medical support is extremely important. But outside of just the biological aspect, there's a psychological aspect to it as well. That having that support system, Nichole mentioned the support system, but also getting professional help where, in absence of the support system, that you may not have, because it's not everyone is in an area where they can get family to just be there for them. So there are times you may have to reach out professional help. You may just have to get somebody on the phone to just talk with you or pray with you, whatever it is. So I would say to anyone, we're a testament to being on the other side, going through it. It was not easy. Like, it was extremely difficult. If there were programs like this that you're having now where we could actually listen, and maybe there is, but we didn't hear that. We, at the time, couldn't find content to say, help us to go through this and hear people give their testimonies and just share their stories of what they're going through and overcoming it. Funny thing is, we believe that even to some extent, maybe a taboo when we talk about miscarriages, because when we're going through it, realize how common miscarriages are and stillbirths. But women, they don't talk about it. Our people don't talk about it as much, at least publicly. Because funny thing is, when we're talking to even family members that have kids, they're like, oh, I had a miscarriage, or, oh, I had a stillbirth. And I'm like, really? Like, it was so shocking to us to know that they experienced this but never shared it. It just went into an abyss after they experienced it. But it is something that it is a challenge in itself for persons to go through. And it is extremely important that people talk about it and be able to help others to overcome it. So that's part of the reason why we're sharing the story, for the very reason to allow somebody who may hear this interview to be able to say, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah.
What would you say, Nichole?
I agree with Ricardo that, we're hoping that our testimony can help someone out there who's going through the same thing we're going through, or similar experiences. But I think what's most important to know as you go through is that in our church, we are very good with this, the religion, the Bible, but there are some social issues, Marlon, that we don't address very well.
Yeah.
This one that we're going through is one that nobody talks about it. Nobody's expected. I don't know, this aim for perfection as Christians are perfect, having issues. So when we do have problems, it's almost as if talking about it is admitting that we're not perfect after all. And it's a big problem because the church is influential. You get married, you're a family, you go through different stages in your marriage, and the church is not always equipped to help you. It's the reality. You're going on YouTube, you're going on other places to get information about your problem, and sometimes you can't even talk to people about your issues because instead of encouraging, they might discourage you even worse.
Right.
So people don't talk about it, and people don't know where to turn to get help. So I really admire what you're doing with Family on Point and talking about these difficult conversations that you normally hear the secular world talk about more boldly. But I just pray that, persons seek professional counsel. There is profession. You have to have a mix. You can't just, rely on someone who's not qualified or don't have the experience you have. Not meaning they didn't go through what you went through or what you're going through to help you. They may create more hurt and more damage. So you have to also be smart, that acknowledge the problem that you're in and reflect on what type of help you need and seek professional help at all times. But, with the professional comes the spiritual as well. While you want to speak to somebody from the church, you also want to get to know God for yourself.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Because the Holy Spirit will guide you, and give you wisdom in how to approach and deal with the circumstances that you're going through in the moment. And the most important thing, as I've been echoing, is fortifying your mind and having the right attitude, the right, having a faith posture, believe for it, and challenge God, challenge him. He has made promises, so challenge him on those promises that he has for your life, and claim the victory over sin. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Nichole and Ricard. This has been wonderful. I know probably we went on longer than we had anticipated, but this is a beautiful interview. I know that, our viewers, they're going to love this because you guys have been really candid. You guys have given us a mouthful. You did not hold anything back. And so thank you so much. And I know lots of, couples and those who are trying to, have children, they would be blessed by this content. And so thanks again. We really appreciate you both, and we're praying for you, and we know you guys going to go far, and I'm so happy for Grace as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Check out our other videos.